Welcome back. Criticisms hound the Supreme Court's decision to declare the impeachment articles against Vice President Sara Duterte as unconstitutional. Several groups have filed a motion for reconsideration, arguing the ruling sets a dangerous precedent. Let's get on point with Tindig Pilipinas co-convenor Francis Aquino Dee. Good evening, Kiko, and nice to talk to you again.
Hi, Willard. Good evening, and thank you for having me today. Good evening to everyone listening to us tonight.
First of all, Kiko, did you expect the ruling of the Supreme Court declaring as unconstitutional the articles of impeachment?
I think we were preparing po for the possibility, no? And while, in fact, last week, when the complainant sort of caught wind that when the Supreme Court first took notice of the case and started requesting information from the House of Representatives, we already thought that this was a bit unusual kasi nga, our understanding is that the legislature is supposed to be supreme when it comes to impeachment. No? So I think already when that happened, we started talking about, what if they find in favor of dismissing the complaint. So we filed a motion to intervene. We at that point were not parties to the case, but we filed a motion to intervene last Friday, during the last day of the rains. Parang tumawid pa ako sa baha just to be able to file a motion to intervene. And then that happened just a few hours, I think, before the Supreme Court decision was released. And then again, we talked again among the complainants, is there anything still that we can do? Because we really feel that the decision has negative impacts. So the lawyers we consulted mentioned that we can file ad cautelam a motion for reconsideration just to make sure that all of the arguments that we've actually been seeing online discussed, that there were certain facts of the proceedings that happened in the House that the Supreme Court didn't take note of. We want to make sure that all of that is considered as the Supreme Court looks at the decision again.
Mm-hmm. And please walk us through your group's motion for reconsideration. In a nutshell, tell us, Kiko, why should the Supreme Court reconsider its decision?
Well, basically, so the legal point siguro, I'll have to refer you to our lawyers to explain the nitty-gritty po. No? But the basic idea po is yung sinasabing due process kasi. Our understanding of due process is that due process is a trial and a verdict, no? And the only body that can actually hold a trial and issue a verdict in cases of impeachment is the Senate, no? So it doesn't make sense to argue that due process was violated when due process wasn't given an opportunity to start, no? Given that the Senate impeachment proceedings never began. So I think that's one of the arguments raised. And then another one siguro is that I think the Supreme Court sort of interpreted the House's action on what's called the fourth impeachment complaint as an act of discretion. Parang pinili ng House na mag-focus dito sa fourth impeachment complaint rather than the initial three. But our understanding po is the only time that impeachment proceedings begin, this is the old jurisprudence, the only time that impeachment proceedings begin is when the House as a plenary acts on something. So yung first three impeachment complaints, kasama po yung complaint na final namin, none of these were acted upon, none of these represented an initiation of the impeachment proceedings because the House as a plenary did not act on them. Only one or two congressmen, representatives endorsed the complaints. No? The only time the House acted as a plenary was when 1/3 or more than 1/3 of all members of the House endorsed an impeachment complaint. And in the Constitution, it's clear, pag nangyayari yun, elevate na yun sa Senate. No? So the House was merely, our understanding is that the House was merely, was compelled to act by this fourth complaint. And so yung nangyari, it doesn't make sense to think of our first ones as sort of effectively dismissed kasi the only ones that the House initiated was the fourth. And siguro the last point to make na lang po is just one of parang justice po, no? So parang kaming mga nag-file ng unang impeachment complaint, right? Parang lumalabas na yung mismong complaint namin yung ginagamit na excuse para i-dismiss yung impeachment proceedings kay VP Sara na napaka-contradictory naman, no? Parang we as citizens used the power that was given to us in the Constitution para masimula yung impeachment complaints na to. And due to no fault of our own, parang hindi nabibigyan, kumbaga hindi nabibigyan ng pagkakataon na madinig yung kaso namin in the proper forum, which is the Senate. So, yun, we're hoping that the Supreme Court considers this again, because if the current interpretation of the Supreme Court stands, parang hindi ko na may imagine na kakayanin naming mga, kahit sinong mamamayan na mag-file ng impeachment complaint, even if we feel that there are very, very credible grounds to do so.
And do you share that concern, Kiko? Kasi may mga nagsasabi na the ruling might be used to shut down future impeachment complaints against accountable public officials.
Yes po. So, again, parang maraming nagsasabi na nung panahon ni PGMA po, no? Ang strategy niya ay may tao na magpa-file ng may tao na magpa-file ng impeachment complaint. Medyo malabnaw, medyo mahina. Tapos a-actionan yun ng Justice Committee na medyo hawak din niya. And then yun they throw out the complaint, and then medyo mag-activate na yung 1-year bar. No? So ngayon, parang lalong bibilis yung activation of the 1-year bar. It's not when the House Committee acts on it. It's when effectively it's the moment na tinanggap ito ng House Secretary General, parang initiation na pala yun, di ba? So any person, kumbaga parang magiging unahan niyan ng pag-file right? And that doesn't seem like, parang first come, first serve does not seem like the best approach towards accountability po. No? So again, aaminin ko naman po no, na hindi naman po ako abogado, hindi naman po ako eksperto dito, pero I do share in those fears na parang sobrang butas ng karayom na ngayon kailangang daanan para mapanagot yung mga opisyalis natin. Parang lalong, they made it even narrower. They made the path towards accountability even narrower. This decision is what it feels like po.
And how confident or how hopeful are you that the Supreme Court will reverse its decision, given that the 13 justices who participated in the deliberations were unanimous?
Well, again, we're holding on to that point nga po that there were certain facts that the decision did not take into consideration, that the specific order that the House did things na nauna yung action sa fourth complaint with the 1/3 endorsees, and then the archiving followed. So it's not really consistent with the interpretation na na-dismiss siya. We're hoping that the Supreme Court gives us a chance, or gives at least all parties a chance to present those points. No? And sana yun po, parang we agree that it's somewhat unusual na a case of this magnitude, parang walang hearings, walang oral arguments, they didn't ask for the side of the they didn't ask the counsel for the House or the Senate to present their cases. So sana given yun nga, I think nagigets naman po ng ating justices that this is a very this decision has a lot of downstream effects. So this is really going to be a landmark case. So our hope is that, as the Supreme Court always has, that they give this an issue like this the appropriate amount of attention, time, and focus.
In closing, Kiko, what's your message to the Senate Impeachment Court, given that the Senate is expected to tackle the Supreme Court decision next week, and there are reports na there are already 20 senators who are in favor of deferring to the ruling, even if your group has already filed a motion for reconsideration, or even if there's a pending MR?
Well, siguro 2 points po. No? So the first is, ayun nga, kung meron nga pong pending MR, hindi pa sarado yung usapan sa Supreme Court. No? So kung yung alleged na 19 or 20 na senators na yun are thinking na, well, nag-decision yung Supreme Court, therefore susunod na lang. Yun nga po, may motion for reconsideration. Sana let's wait for the Supreme Court to have a final decision before doing that action. And siguro po, the other thing I'd like to note is yun, we've heard strong statements from people like, not to be self-serving, pero si Senator Bam Aquino, we also heard from Senator Risa Ontiveros, Kiko Pangilinan, and even from people less associated with our side of the opposition, like si Senator Tito Soto, even Senator Joel Villanueva, na nagsasabi na, hindi, nasa Senado naman talaga yung kapangyarihan to try the impeachment case to issue a verdict. And so, it is within their power to continue despite what the decision is made. So ayun. So for those who are using yung Supreme Court decision as the basis for their vote, ayun nga po, siguro I'd like to emphasize na hindi pa tapos yung usapan. No? So there's a motion for reconsideration, baka magbago pa yung magiging decision ng Supreme Court. And ayun po, there is also an interpretation, I think, among some of our senators saying that it is within the Senate's power exclusive power to try and issue a verdict here. So yun po, I hope both of these are considered pag nagkabotohan na, which I believe will happen on Wednesday po.
Yes. Thank you very much, Kiko, for your time. That's Francis Aquino Dee, co-convenor of Tindig Pilipinas.
Thank you po.
And that's On Point. Join us again on Monday, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Willard Cheng, sitting in for Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.